What would you do if you found a baby on your doorstep in the middle of a cold December night? What if that baby came with a letter that would shatter your heart and heal it at the same time? I'm about to share a story that I've carried in my heart for over 15 years. A story of devastating loss, unexpected love, and a second chance I never saw coming. Stay with me, because this gets incredibly emotional, and by the end, you'll understand why this moment changed, not just my life, but saved another's. My name is Margaret Collins, and that December night started like any other. The street lights had just flickered on, casting long shadows across our quiet neighborhood. Most people were settling in for the evening, but something was about to happen that would turn my world upside down. I heard it first, a soft knock at my front door. Now, let me tell you, when you're living alone and it's well past visiting hours, a knock like that gets your attention. At first, I thought maybe it was just the wind playing tricks on me. You know how old houses can be. But something deep inside told me to check, and thank God I did. When I opened that door, my heart nearly stopped. There, sitting on my porch like something out of a movie, was a wicker basket. But this wasn't filled with cookies or holiday treats. Inside was a tiny baby boy, bundled in soft blankets, his little cheeks red from the December cold. But he was breathing. He was alive. And lying right beside him was a handwritten letter that would change everything. My hands were shaking, I mean literally trembling, as I picked up that letter. And here's the thing that still gives me chills. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from my son, Ethan. Now, to understand why this moment hit me like a freight train, I need to take you back. Ethan was the boy I had raised on my own after his father left when he was just 3. I poured everything I had into that child, my hopes, my dreams, my entire heart. But Ethan was complicated. He was spirited, full of questions and energy. But as he grew older, that energy transformed into something else entirely. Restlessness, rebellion, a burning desire to escape everything I thought I was building for him. The last time I saw my son, he was 17, and angry at the world, especially angry at me. Our final argument still echoes in my mind, even after all these years. It started over something so simple, a broken fence near our garden. I had asked him, again, to fix it. He rolled his eyes with that teenage attitude we all know too well, and said something that cut me to the core. Why do you care so much about stupid things like fences when everything in this house feels broken? That hit different. I tried to explain that taking care of small things teaches us how to handle big things, that responsibility builds character. But he wasn't hearing me. Not really. He was already pulling away, and I could feel it. Then he brought home Lola. She was everything that made me nervous as a mother. Bold, loud, rebellious. The kind of girl who looked like she didn't belong in our quiet town. Messy hair, heavy eyeliner, and this don't care attitude that just rubbed me the wrong way. But Ethan, he was completely mesmerized by her. They would disappear into his room for hours, laughing too loud, ignoring my house rules, treating me like I was invisible in my own home. When I tried to talk to Ethan about it, he snapped, "You never understand me, you never listen. Maybe I don't belong here at all." And then one morning, they were just gone. Picture this, you wake up, go to check on your child, and their room is empty, the bed unmade, a few clothes missing, but no note, no explanation, just silence. That's what I lived with for years. Years. I waited every single day for some kind of message, a call, a letter, anything. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And as a mother, let me tell you, there's nothing more painful than not knowing where your child is, or whether they're even safe. I told myself he'd come back, that maybe he just needed time to figure things out. Young people do that, right? They need to spread their wings, make their mistakes, find themselves. I never imagined that the next time I'd hear from him, it would be through a letter left beside a baby he felt too broken to raise. But let's go back to that letter, because what it said changed everything. Standing there in the cold, with a baby in my arms. I read Ethan's letter over and over again. My fingers were trembling, not just from the December air, but from the raw emotion in every word he'd written. He wrote that Lola had died shortly after giving birth. Can you imagine? This young woman, barely out of her teens, gone. He explained that he had tried for a few days to care for the baby on his own, but grief had completely swallowed him whole. He didn't feel ready. He didn't feel worthy. He was terrified of being a father. But here's the part that absolutely undid me. At the bottom of the letter, there was one final line. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know this is asking too much, but please don't let him grow up feeling abandoned." I looked down at that baby, Noah. His name was Noah, and he was sleeping so peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling beneath this soft blue blanket. His face had the same delicate curve of Ethan's nose when he was a baby. His tiny fingers were curled tightly around the edge of the fabric, like he was holding on to life itself. And right then, something shifted inside me. Yes, I was heartbroken. Yes, I was angry and overwhelmed. But above all, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. How many of you have experienced that moment when life hands you something you never expected, never planned for, but somehow know you're meant to handle? That's exactly what this was. Let me paint you a picture. I was in my early 60s when Noah came into my world. Most people my age are thinking about quiet mornings, maybe some gardening, perhaps a little traveling. But suddenly, I'm waking up at 2 a.m. to feed a baby, changing diapers, learning how to swaddle all over again. And you know what? It was exhausting, but it was also healing. Noah grew fast, and I mean fast. By the time he was 2, he was running around our living room, chasing shadows, and giggling so loud it literally shook the walls. Every time he laughed, it softened something broken inside me. Every time he reached for me with those little arms, I felt like maybe I hadn't completely failed as a mother after all. People in town would ask questions, of course. Where were his parents? Why was I raising him? I'd just smile and say, "It's a long story." And it was. One that Noah didn't need to carry too early in his life. I told him his parents had loved him very much, but had passed away, and that I was here because they had trusted me to keep him safe. We had this little ritual at bedtime. I'd tuck him in, kiss his forehead, and whisper, "You were chosen, Noah. You were never abandoned. You were chosen." Sometimes he'd ask what I meant. I'd just hold his hand and smile, knowing he'd understand one day. I just hoped, when that day came, he'd still believe me. But here's the thing about raising children. Sometimes history has a way of repeating itself in the most heartbreaking ways. By the time Noah turned 15, he was taller than me, and full of that same fire I'd seen in Ethan's eyes. That spark that said, "I want to live life on my own terms." And just like his father, he began testing boundaries. One hot July afternoon, we had a fight. He wanted to go to a weekend music festival, 2 towns over, unsupervised, camping overnight. I said no. I told him it wasn't safe, that the world could be unforgiving, especially to young people who thought they were invincible. "You don't trust me," he shouted. "It's not you I don't trust," I said, my voice sharp with fear. "It's everything else." He stormed off to the kitchen, and before I could follow him, I heard a loud thud. That sound still haunts me. When I got there, he was on the floor, clutching his side, pale and shaking. "Grandma," he whispered, his voice thin and broken. "Something's wrong." What happened next would test everything I thought I knew about faith, family, and second chances. At the hospital, they ran tests quickly. A doctor with kind eyes pulled me aside and said words that stopped my world. "He's experiencing acute kidney failure. It appears to be genetic. Does he have a family history of kidney disease?" My breath caught in my throat. Ethan's letter had mentioned that Lola struggled with kidney issues, something I'd buried in the back of my mind all these years. I never thought it would catch up to Noah. I told the doctors to test me immediately. If I could give him one of my kidneys, I would do it without blinking. But the results came back within a day. I wasn't a match. Our neighbors offered. Church friends signed up. People I barely knew stepped forward. But one by one, the answer was always the same: incompatible. Every time they said that word, it felt like a door closing. Noah was strong on the outside, but I could see the fear behind his jokes, his half smiles, the way he avoided talking about the transplant. One night, he looked at me and said quietly, "I just don't want to die, Grandma." I held his hand tightly and promised him we'd find a way. But honestly, I was praying more than I ever had in my life. Then one morning, and I'll never forget this moment, a nurse walked into Noah's room with a look I hadn't seen in weeks: hope. "We found a donor," she said. "A perfect match, completely compatible." I couldn't speak. My hands flew to my mouth as tears spilled down my cheeks. Noah blinked in disbelief. "Are you serious?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Yes," she nodded. "You're scheduled for surgery tomorrow." It felt like the sky had opened up, like after weeks of storm clouds, the sun had finally found us again. But what we didn't know, what no one had told us, was who that anonymous donor really was. And that truth? It was going to change everything once again. The surgery went smoothly. Noah came through it with strength I hadn't seen in him for months. When he woke up, the first thing he asked was, "Do I get to meet them, the person who saved me?" I told him we didn't know, that some donors chose to remain anonymous. I could see the disappointment on his face. But 2 days later, while helping him walk the hospital hallway, we passed the nurse's station. I overheard something that made my heart stop. I still can't believe he came all the way from Arizona just to do it, and insisted on no contact. Most people would want some kind of thank you. Well, I guess when it's your son, that's enough. I stopped cold. Could it be? Could Ethan have found out and come back? That night, after Noah fell asleep, I went back to that nurse's station. I asked carefully, casually, pretending I had overheard part of their conversation. The nurse looked surprised, but repeated what she'd said. "Pretty incredible. The man said it was for his biological son, but asked us not to tell the family." In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty Ethan had returned, not to ask for forgiveness, not to take Noah away, but to give him life. The days after surgery were a whirlwind of relief and quiet reflection. Noah's strength returned faster than anyone expected. But there was a new question lingering in the air, one I knew I had to answer. One afternoon, as he rested in his hospital bed, I sat beside him and took a deep breath. "Noah," I began gently, "there's something important I need to tell you, about your father, about your story." He looked at me with wide eyes, curiosity mixed with nervousness. "I want to know everything, Grandma." I told him about Ethan, about the boy who left our house, broken and scared, the young man who had loved Lola and lost her too soon. I explained how he had left Noah in my care, believing it was the best chance he had at a good life. "Did he ever want to be part of my life?" Noah asked quietly. I squeezed his hand. "Yes, he did. In his own way, he's watched over you from afar, and recently, he made the hardest decision of his life. He gave you his kidney." The news washed over him like a wave: relief, gratitude, confusion, and hope, all mixed together. Weeks passed since Noah's surgery, and the house felt different, lighter, yet full of unspoken anticipation. I knew Ethan had to come back eventually. One quiet afternoon, while I was tending to the garden, I noticed a figure walking slowly up our driveway. My heart skipped a beat when I recognized him. It was Ethan. He looked older, worn by time and regret, but unmistakably my son. "Mom," he said softly, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. I know I left you with so much pain. But I had to come back." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at him, memories flooding back, both the good and the bad. Then, with tears streaming down my face, I reached out and pulled him into a hug. It was the kind of hug that carried years of sorrow and longing. Later, when Noah came home from school, I gently prepared him. Your father is here. He wants to see you. The day Ethan and Noah met was one I'll never forget. They stood face to face, two strangers connected by blood, and a lifetime of unanswered questions. Why did you leave me? Noah asked quietly. Ethan swallowed hard. I was scared. Scared I wasn't good enough. I thought if I stayed, I'd only hurt you more. Noah's expression softened just a little. I always wanted to know you, to know why, and maybe to be a family. Ethan reached out, hesitating for a moment before pulling Noah into a tentative hug. It was awkward, raw, and beautiful all at once, the first step toward healing. We sat together that evening, 3 generations sharing stories, laughter, and tears. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't be easy, but it was a beginning. For the first time in a long time, our family felt whole again. Not because the past was erased, but because we chose to face it together. And that choice made all the difference. Life has a way of testing us, of breaking us down, and then sometimes, just sometimes, giving us a chance to rise again. My story is proof that love can endure even the hardest trials. That family can be rebuilt from the pieces left behind. Sometimes the people we think have abandoned us are actually watching from a distance, waiting for the right moment to show up. Sometimes second chances come, disguised as our greatest challenges. And sometimes the baby left on your doorstep isn't just changing your life, they're saving it. If this story touched your heart, I want to hear from you in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed your perspective on family? Have you had to make impossible choices for the people you love? Hit that like button if you believe in second chances. Share this video with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe to The Art of Forgiveness for more stories of resilience, redemption, and the incredible power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Thank you for listening to Margaret's story. Thank you for believing that broken families can be made whole again. Until next time, remember, you are chosen. You are not abandoned. You are loved.